offices, mainly the White River Field Office. That was basically my home base. So I cover the entire White Mountain Apache Reservation. And also a couple of years ago, we did a reorganization within the state. So we, instead of home base White River, now we cover on our team White River, Holbrook, and Springerville. So I've also taken on some duties for conservation planning in the Holbrook Field Office, which covers Snowflake, Taylor, Winslow, pretty much running the whole county. With the Natural Resources Conservation Service, our mission is helping people help the land. NRCS offers technical and financial assistance to eligible landowners and ag producers to help manage natural resources in a sustainable manner. Technical assistance, what we do, we address opportunities, concerns, and problems related to the use of our natural resources. We help land users make sound natural resource management decisions on private, tribal, and other non-federal lands. Financial assistance. With NRCS, we offer financial assistance and technical assistance. If you find you're not qualifying right now, we're not closing the door on you. We'd be glad to come out and give you some technical assistance to kind of get you on the road to qualifying for our financial assistance down the road. In order to obtain financial assistance, there must be a resource concern. That's our driving principle. There's got to be some type of a problem out there. If you've got a farm or ranch and it looks perfect, you don't need our help right now. But a lot of people have issues, such as soil erosion. You've got wind erosion, you've got gully erosion, you could even have some wind erosion. I heard Russ talking about windbreaks. That is a conservation practice that we provide financial cost sharing on, because I know up in this area, it seems like it's a big wind belt up here, and that wind can provide cause a lot of damage to your crops. We also do water issues, like if you've got inefficient irrigation water to your crops, and that could also be to your livestock. Animal, again, inadequate livestock water. I'm working with a producer in Snowflake right now. He's got an approximate 50-year-old concrete line ditch. It's leaking, very inefficient. He came in and applied for some cost sharing. We went through all the hoops with him. So he was able to get a contract approved, and we're going to go into a piped ditch now, buried pipeline. Plants. Maybe there's just not enough forage. For instance, grasses out there for your cattle or wildlife. Some people want to attract in wildlife, and we do things for wildlife too, pollinators and such. Plants. You may have too many junipers on your property. And I'm referring mostly to the shaggy bark junipers. That's the Utah and the one-seed junipers. You could tell they have shaggy type barks. And there's a lot of alligator junipers out there also. And you can treat them, but the alligator junipers resprout. So it's going to be something you'll constantly have to be on top of and provide the operation and maintenance on that to catch those alligator sprouts from when they pop out. We also do resources on forest land. We've been in this area, we work with the Department of Forestry and Fire Management Forester, John Arona. Not sure if that name rings a bell. We work with him on the reservation. Got a couple of very big contracts with them, just working on thinning the forest land after they've cut the branches down. What they do is they'll lop and scatter. So they've got some of these branches scattered around, but what they're also doing is piling the branches up in these limbs. And what that's going to do is going to provide a cover for wildlife. And plus, at some point down the road, they would like to burn those piles. I know with tribal council, it's sometimes a little iffy whether they want to go that route. I know the BIA has some burning down there, but sometimes it's hard to get them to go into the burning those piles just because of potential wildfire hazards. And then speaking of wildfire hazards, from biomass accumulation, we all live in a high wildfire area, and we want to do things to thin the trees out so it gets rid of that biomass. So if there is a fire come through, it's not catastrophic. And the common resource concerns in this area, I'd say stretching within the whole Navajo County, is degraded plant condition, your plant productivity and health. If you're growing crops, your yields might not be where you want them to be at, or they're just kind of not real healthy looking. They look like they're struggling. They might have nutrient deficiencies or some insect problems. We have livestock production limitation. Again, inadequate livestock water, quality, quantity, and distribution. Wildfire hazard from biomass, again, just because this is a high wildfire danger area. And then depending on the resource concern, what we do is once we identify, come out to your property and identify this resource concern, we'll work together to develop a plan. And it's not my plan, it would be your plan. We'll work together to see what best works for your farm or ranch operation and your goals. And then we would determine what practices would best fit that concern. Like if you have a high infestation of junipers, brush management may be the route to go to do some thinning. High tunnel systems, if you have some cropland and you're not getting that production you want out of it, you might want to think about a high tunnel to extend that growing season. We have prescribed grazing. If you're rotating your cattle, maybe not as frequently as you should, and the ground looks like a golf course there, and there's not enough forage for your cattle, you might want to think about doing a prescribed grazing plan. Letting them stay on that ground till the grass is maybe about yay high, move them to your next pasture. Just keep it moving. And then cover crop. Again, if you're not getting the yields out of your cropland that you want, you might want to consider a cover crop. It's an extra expense, but it's something that will benefit you down the road, because when you put a cover crop in, when that completes its growing season, you can till it into your ground or just mow it and let it sit there. And that plant material will denigrate and adds nitrogen to your soil. So it's free nitrogen that you don't have to pay a company to spread it out there for you. And our major type of financial assistance, basically our bread and butter program, is called the Environmental Quality Incentive Program, and we call it EQIP. It's funded by the Farm Bill of 2018, so there'll be a new Farm Bill coming out here, I say probably next year, every 4 years. And one thing with EQIP, it's not a grant. You don't get the money up front. You actually have to install the practice, and then you get reimbursable funding. And it's a strictly voluntary program. We're not a regulatory agency. If you would like to work with us, that's great. We're more than glad to help you. And if we come out and talk to you and you find that's not your cup of tea and you don't want to get involved with government programs, it's done. You know, we walk away. We do take applications year round. And before we even get to a point where we take an application, we do like to sit down with you, talk about your goals, your objectives for your farm or ranch, walk around the property and just get a feel for what problems are actually there. And sometimes we can get 50 or so applications. And unfortunately, we usually don't have enough money allocated to like the White River office or the Holbrook office. So what we have to do is we rank them or score them based on your existing natural resource concerns. You'll get your application will be scored. The one with the highest score gets funded first, and we just go down that line until we run out of money. But the door's still not closed to you, because if we run out of money and by the time we get to your application, if there's no money left, we keep your application on file and we'll defer it to the following year. And you just continuously do that till you hit and get funded. And from what I've been understanding, we've been getting, we will be getting a lot more money here than what we've normally been getting. Congress has been very nice, and we're getting a boatload of money. So we could possibly fund all applications that we get. And our application deadline, even though we take applications year round, what our upper management would say, hey, on December 16th, all the applications that you've got in your hand and in your file, start working on them. So that deadline is coming up. And as of last week, we've got some 4 interim practices that we're going to be trying out. And interim means we're going to test it out this year, see how much interest that we get. Next year, for fiscal year 24, it might not be here. It's just going to depend on how much interest there is. For instance, we have amending soil properties with lime, which I don't think would be very applicable for this area. Because you typically, when you add lime to a soil, you're trying to increase the pH. And like Russ was saying, a lot of the soils in this area are 7.5. And I know working down in White River area, they're in the 8s. The Canyon Day Farm, just outside White River, their pHs were 8.5. I'm kind of surprised anything will grow there, but there's particular crops that don't mind that high pH. We got the soil carbon amendment, composting on off-site, biochar compost, and compost small areas, and carbon amendment. Biochar, if you're not familiar with that, that's basically, it's a charcoal type material, and it's burnt agricultural and forestry products, and you can put that on your land, and it helps with water retention in your soil, and it helps the soil structure. It makes it more friable, so you can work with it a little bit better. We have raised beds, contamination or debris sites only, like unframed raised beds and framed raised beds. I'm not aware of any contamination or debris sites around, so I'm not sure how applicable that would be. And this one here, I think we might get some takers on it. It'd be the low tunnel system. We do provide cost sharing for high tunnels, and this is a new practice for us, the low tunnels. They're typically about 4 feet high, I think about 3 to 5 feet wide, and there's like a temporary cover. You can actually lift the cover off during the day when you've got the sun and the heat, and then you can cover it again in the evening when it's cooler. And that just kind of helps you get a head start on your cold season crops, like your lettuces, and your cold crops like cabbage and broccoli, to get that started. A couple of other programs that we do is the Regional Conservation Partnership Program. And that's like NRCS teaming with maybe the university here to work on a large scale project. And I also have the Conservation Stewardship Program. That's for some of our folks that have been equipped. They've kind of addressed all their resource concerns. They're doing a good job. And if they go into this CSP program, that's kind of bumping it up and going to the next step. You're already doing a good job, and this has really good payment rates on it. But again, it says like you've already done a great job. Now you're willing to go a little bit further, and there's more work involved with it. But again, it has pretty good payment rates on it. And again, our programs are not grants, it's reimbursable. So you'd have to pay for that out of your pocket first, and then get reimbursed after it's been completed. And once that project has been completed, myself or other staff, we would come out and certify it. And if everything passed our inspections or certifications, then we would get you your payment. And the payment's pretty quick. Once we certify and payment, it might be a week or two at the most. So you're not out there hanging. And then with our programs also, you never go into it blind. You're aware of what's going on from step to step to step. We work with you a lot. Matter of fact, we get probably a little bit too pesty at times, where we're showing up at your house, looking at your resource concerns, asking questions. And that's just because we're just trying to get the big picture, and we're always open to your suggestions and ideas. Again, it's your conservation plan, not ours. And we want it to be successful, and we want you to be successful. We don't want to set you up for failure. And a lot of practices, if you have a long laundry list of things that you need to do on your property, it's highly suggested to start in small chunks. Do doable things first. Don't get over your head. I've seen people do that, especially nowadays with some of the contracts that I have in this area. Some folks are having problems satisfying their contracts and getting their practices installed because of the supply chain. I've got one lady in Shumway, she's kind of on the wire of canceling her contract. She wanted to put in a buried irrigation pipeline. She's got a concrete line ditched also. And she got some prices from a dealer in Show Low, and what they were quoting her for prices was, she says, I can't do this. And I've got a couple other people in the same boat. So you want to make sure you have your ducks in a row. When you come in and talk to us, we have a payment schedule. We'll tell you exactly what things are costing. So you know up front, like, hey, this is too much for me to do right now. Can we do something else? So there's that option, but you'll know from step one to signing the contract what's going on. And again, the 5 steps to assistance is basically planning, talking to us, letting us know your goals, objectives for your farm, submitting an application. We'll have eligibility. We have land has to be eligible. You have to have a crop planted there at least 2 years. You have to be an ag producer also, either have control of the land, or if you're renting or leasing, just provide proof of that. Ranking, that's what I mentioned a few minutes ago. We get so many applications. We would love to fund everybody, but we got to get the highest one that has basically the most bang for the buck. It has the most serious environmental issues, hit them first, then we go down the line. And then implementing the plan. After it's been implemented, we'll come out and again, look at it. And then a year or two later, we'll come out and just see how it's going. Or that brush management project you did to thin the junipers, do you need to do more? How are they making out? But it's really important with operation and maintenance, that's on the landowner or the contract signer to keep on top of the operation and maintenance. Like with pipelines, make sure you clean the sediment out of there. If you've cut some alligator junipers, cut those sprouts as soon as you see them so they're not taken off again. And again, and this is just our planning process. We have phase 1, objectives, identifying what problems you have. Once we do that, we'll come out there and we'll look at your land. We'll identify your resources and inventory them. Then we'll move on to the decision and support. What kind of alternatives are you interested in? We'll suggest some conservation practices to install and see if that works with what you have in mind, and make a decision, then implement a plan, and then evaluate the plan. And next, I've got some photos of some typical conservation practices used in this area to treat natural resource concerns. This first one here is on the White Mountain Apache Reservation. They were interested in doing some brush management. They typically target just the shaggy bark junipers. So we had one of our range cons from Tucson came up, and what he's doing, we're doing a canopy cover count. We'll walk transects, determine what the percent canopy cover is. Is it a light infestation, medium, or heavy? Because there's different payment rates for each of those infestations. This is a brush management treatment over in kind of this area over here is Route 60. Again, on the reservation, this is before treatment. Yes.
Are there reimbursement materials only?
Labor materials.
Are there reimbursements for material only, or is it
materials and labor?
Sorry.
Materials and labor?
You just said are there reimbursements for material only, so material and labor?
Yes.
Okay, sorry.
And then mentioning that on our payment schedule, those payments, you'll know exactly, again, how much materials and then what's covered in there, especially with, I hear a lot of complaints when people put in fence lines that we don't pay enough. And again, it depends if it's like running a straight line fence, like in this area, and the country is really flat, there's not a lot there. But if it's really rough country, the payment rate's a little bit higher. And then again, this is after treatment, and the tribe's just going to leave these old carcasses on site because that'd be habitat for mammals, and also it provides small microclimates because they like to promote more of the cool season grasses, and these little microclimates in here that you'll get more cool season grasses developing. Now this is on the San Carlos Apache Reservation. I was trying to talk that White Mountain into doing this, but it wasn't very successful. But there are wildlife water catchments. So the water would hit the corrugated metal here, goes into this, like this bin here. And then what it'll do too is it'll run back to that storage tank. So that storage tank will eventually fill up. And that'll provide water for wildlife, because I know we work with the Game and Fish Office too, and a lot of times they're hauling water during the summer times because there's just not enough out there for the wildlife. So we do that also. This is a forest thinning project. Again, it's thinning a lot of the ponderosa pines, and they may come back in here and pile this, or they might do a prescribed burn. And this is for livestock water, and this was a remote area on the reservation. They were interested in doing a windmill, and you don't have to do windmills. You can do solar. I think solar is probably the way most people are going, or most ranchers are going, but they were really interested in just sticking with the windmill. So the part of their plan and contract was a new windmill. They had a storage tank and a new drinker that they installed. High tunnels, several different options here. It's used to extend the growing season. It improves plant health and vigor. And crops must be planted in the ground or in raised beds. You can't install them in containers. And it must be erected in the footprint of the existing garden. If you've just got a bare piece of land like over here, you just can't install your tunnel there. It would have to be actually in a footprint of where you've got some crops growing right now. So basically just sits right in that footprint. It's installed using a manufactured kit, and there's a 5-year lifespan on the tunnels. This is an example of a high tunnel on the reservation. They have 2 of them. We financed one, and they financed the other one. The one in the back has the 6 mil plastic on the top. This one here, they use a shade cloth, because what they were doing was putting seedlings back here, and then to finish them off, they would put them in under the shade cloth. And also with our specs, it called for using some gravel in here. So any water running off the top of the high tunnel, it would hit that gravel, and it wouldn't be leaving just like a muddy pile around there.
How high is that? Looks huge.
Yes, it's pretty tall. I don't remember the height offhand, but you could easily walk through it.
Yeah.
And this is an example of some of the crops they were growing there. And again, that was at the Canyon Day Farm. They've had quite a bit of success with them. And this is an example of a high tunnel system at Pine Door Farms at Pinedale. And I believe she was here last week or just recently talking about her tunnels. And in addition to our financial assistance, we do soil education. So if you're finding that you're just not getting a lot of crops out of your land, again, they're just kind of looking a little sickly, no yield, or you've got a bunch of weeds, what we can do is we can have a soil scientist come out and actually determine your soil health. We got soil scientists in Flagstaff and one in Globe. Between either one of them, we would be glad to come out there. They have a soil health test kit. They can do pH, so it would save Anita from doing this, and they can tell you right on the spot. We look at electrical conductivity, which is basically, are your soils kind of on the salty side? They can look at compaction. I know we have a lot of soils that have a lot of compaction there from equipment running back and forth, or a lot of cattle in there. And they can tell you a lot of great things right in the field. And then sometimes they have to go back to the lab and just do some more testing there. And what's nice is they'll develop a report, and then they send it to me, and I pass it along to you. And they'll usually provide some really good examples for you. We've been doing some the local farms and pastures around in town here. And basically it all comes down to cover crops, add some nutrients into your soil, because some of the pastures I've worked with, they were rangeland in the past. So, they're kind of barren with nutrients in there. They've been compacted, and they've just been tilling them up and turning them into a pasture. And most of them are just like, there's no nutrients there. And Arizona has very low organic matters in the soil anyway, just naturally. So the more that you can put in there, the better your crops will be. And that was a short and sweet. This is my contact information. I have an office in Show Low on the Deuce Clubs in the Rural Development Office. That's where I'm housed. And then I work basically the entire county. That's my halfway point between White River and Holbrook. And again, like if you'd like for us to come out and look at your soils, there's no cost at all with that. We're glad to help people. And just to sum up, we have financial and technical assistance. If you don't quite qualify for the financial yet, we'll be glad to help you with the technical assistance, looking at your soils, just see what kind of problems you have and coming up with suggestions to kind of get your ducks in a row. We do have in our field office tech guide, we have standards and specifications. That's all online, but we can be glad to provide those to you and just talk to you about it and just make you more informed. And Anita said she was going to fire some questions on me, so quiz me. So I hope I pass here.